magical thinking. When it comes to complex trauma and healing. In reality, all children have this capacity to have magical thinking, right? And so in many lands, it's customary to actually tell children magical stories, such as the existence of fairies or saints that are going to come and bear gifts and things like that. And so we're all susceptible to magical thinking. But what can happen to us with trauma is, especially when trauma is experienced in childhood, our mind can try to resort to magical thinking as a way to cope with um, our childhood trauma, if that makes sense to you. So again, our mind can actually resort to magical thinking as a way to cope with our childhood trauma. So if we had a parent that abandoned us, or that was not there for us, or that was mean to us, we may have um, convinced ourselves that the way that parent is treating us is not who they really are. And we could develop certain rituals that would make us feel more in control. So many people created rituals around saying a certain word. And if they say this word, then they're going to be okay. And this gives them a sense of control in an unstable environment. They could have rigid anxiety-driven rituals, like I have to do this and do that in order for me to feel okay. Sometimes they will develop superstitions, such as wearing the same shirt, wearing the same baseball hat. And these superstitions are a form of magical thinking. They're ways of a person feeling like they have some sort of control by doing a certain behavior. And that behavior is going to help them. It's going to save them. This is a form of magical thinking. Also, we could have unusual religious beliefs that are forms of magical thinking, ways of us trying to make sense of our universe, even though the things that we're believing in are not backed by science or even our own religion necessarily. So young children are still learning about how the world works. So they may assume that their internal and external worlds are more closely related than they are. So a person with magical thinking, especially a young child, may have an idea that they caused something that they see happening on the outside with something on the inside. For instance, I cursed in my head at my teacher today, and then a person got hit by a car. Magical thinking will cause us to link those unrelated events. Does that make sense? I did something wrong. I sinned, or I told a lie, and then my grandmother died on the same day. That's a form of magical thinking. It's this idea that these unrelated events are actually related. And then if we continue down this road of magical thinking, we start seeing relations in a lot of things that aren't necessarily the case, right? So you could be looking at the social media of your abuser and then feeling like you're seeing signs of them trying to talk to you, even though they're not directly addressing you. So you could develop magical thinking, like when they say this and say that, they're referring to something in my past, or they've done some research on me, or they're coming for me, or this is the day that they're coming to get me, when none of these things are actually linked, and we don't have a lot of evidence to support that these things are actually linked. These are forms of magical thinking. Of course, delusions, the delusions that we can control others with our thoughts, or that we have godlike powers, delusions that we can put a spell on someone to make them love us, or something like that. Magical thinking, though, has permeated pop culture, meaning popular culture, the majority of people actually have some form of magical thinking. Think about phrases like good luck. Good luck. What are we saying when we tell someone good luck? It's a form of magical thinking. Like, hopefully, some goddess of luck is going to sprinkle some dust on you, and that's what's going to make you do well today. So we're like calling out into the universe for this person to have luck. But is that based in a backed religious doctrine? No. Have people been saying it for centuries? Yes. And so it permeates popular culture. Uh, Wishing and manifestation, thinking that simply wishing for something will make it come true without the practical steps to achieve it. So again, popular culture, they say, hey, make a wish, right? Could be associated with a birthday or something like that. And then you're blowing and you're thinking that there's going to be some mystical thing that's supposed to happen when you make a wish. But again, is this backed in anything? No. In fact, if we're honest, a lot of the things we wish for don't actually come true. So maybe making a wish isn't something that's based in reality, but it's a form of popular magical thinking. And because these things are so popular, we tend to just accept them. We accept that they are forms of ways that we can kind of control our world without actually being able to control our world. We see this manifest in manifestation, the idea that you will just simply think it and it will come true. And if you think it hard enough, then it will become real. It's missing some steps there. It's not totally untrue that our thoughts are powerful and that we can create things with our mind. It's just that you got to back it up with action, right? Even in Christianity, faith without works is dead, right? So if you just, I believe that I shall be rich, you just keep saying that, but you don't have any action, then it's a form of magical thinking because you're just expecting that this is just all just going to fall into your lap and come true, right? That wouldn't be properly accessing your personal power and ability. So we need the thinking. That's important. But once we create it in our mind to manifest it in this universe, we need to work within the laws of the universe to get that thing moving, to make it happen, right? We see this big in astrology, the belief in the influence of celestial bodies on human affairs and personality traits. So we're like, okay, you tell me what month you're born, I'll tell you how you're going to act in a given situation. This is a form of magical thinking. And I know that can come as a letdown to many who may have put some faith in that or some stock in it because it's very popular. It's permeated popular culture. So people assume there must be something real there. But the reality is we're dipping into the magical thinking because we've now gone beyond where we have substantial evidence that this is a systematic formula that we can tap into. There are some religious rituals that are expected to provoke divine intervention. So does that mean that prayer is necessarily a form of magical thinking? Not necessarily, because it's not necessarily something that could be potentially detrimental or something that's not backed up by evidence. But what can happen is if prayer is misused, it becomes a form of magical thinking. Sort of the way I said, like, faith without works is dead. Well, if your thought is that you're just going to have faith and that's going to do the whole job, then that is a form of magical thinking. It is distorted, it's not based in, it's not rooted in reality. But for instance, if you believe that you can pray and then you can work towards and in harmony with said prayer, you may actually get very good results. And if you think that a divine being is supposed to step in and grant your wishes like a genie, that would be a form of magical thinking. But if you believe you can tap outside of yourself into the spirit realm for strength and wisdom, that is not necessarily a form of magical thinking because it's backed by evidence. It's systematic and it works. There's also the placebo effect. That's where you believe a treatment or an intervention will work simply because of the expectation that it will work. This is used against people all the time. It's used by mentalists and magicians. And what they do is they create all this hype and this expectation around something. And then when they actually give it to you, you're taking it or you're seeing it or you're observing it and you're thinking it's phenomena when really it's just a sleight of hand trick because they created the expectation that it's magic you feel like it is magic. But have you ever seen a behind the scenes where they explain, for instance, a magic trick? And you go, that wasn't magical at all. One magician said, whenever people disappear, it's just a lot of hiding and running really fast. And that's what it is. Like if they hold up a sheet, I should have practiced this ahead of time so I could do one for you. You hold up a sheet, right? And all you do is you just push the sheet up a little bit, you kind of toss it up in the air a little bit, and then you duck down behind something and then run out of the room. When the sheet falls, it looks like you have disappeared. And it's effective. You're looking at the situation, you go, oh my goodness, that person was just behind that sheet. And then all of a sudden, they just disappeared. To our minds, we think that it's magical, especially if the magician bills himself as magic, as a magician. So he's creating a placebo effect, making us feel that it must be real, even though, or it must be magic, even though in reality he did something that's very logical. You just duck down and then you run out, and then we don't see you anymore. This is nothing that, and the most of us couldn't do. Um, Survivors get into the fantasy of control, believing that if you do these actions, these rituals, then it will prevent future harm. This is where you can see OCD being manifest, obsessive compulsive disorder. Many who have OCD find themselves doing some type of ritual with the idea that this is going to control their world in some type of way. So we have to try to recognize, am I tapping into some mysterious force here, thinking that if I do these steps, then everything's going to be all right? Or am I able to recognize where my true power lies and what is outside of my control? And then finally, there's just alternate realities in general. Some survivors elaborate on fantasies or scenarios in which the trauma never occurred, or they have a fantasy land that they escape to. And it just gives them this escapism from reality or their experience. Some women have mentioned being in a abusive relationship. They keep reminding themselves of this idea that everything's going to be different, everything's going to be better. Or if I do this and that, then he won't hit me anymore. This is dipping into magical thinking, like we can suddenly control another person's actions with our actions. It's not necessarily the case, is it? In fact, even just the concept of the one, like we all have a soulmate and there's one person in the universe that's the one for us. That's magical thinking. We do not all have a soulmate. And there's not one person in the world that's right for us. If there was, that would be really cruel, wouldn't it? If God did that. I have put one person in the world that's right for you, because how are we going to find them in a world of billions of people? And further, even if they were nearby and there's a chance we could find them, what if they died? Now your one soulmate on earth died? No. If you make a list of everything you're looking for in a person, you will find not only that that list changes over time, but you will find that there's actually thousands of people out of the billions that exist who would meet those standards and those qualifications. So what is better news for us is there's not just one soulmate, there's thousands of potential mates who would be compatible with us. And that is really great news. That gives us a much better chance of finding a compatible partner. Thinking that God has something better in store for you. In a general sense, of course, that would be the very thrust, the very concept of religion, is believing that God will solve the problems that we face and mankind faces. And that's not wrong, because it gives us a sense of optimism. So therefore, it's a adaptive belief. But if we're bringing it down to a granular level, where we're saying, I believe that God's got something in store for me personally, as if to say that he's actually going to control everything that happens from here on out, that's where we have to be careful. Because once we dip into direct and specific predestination, then that is magical thinking. Does that make sense? Because with predestination, it would contradict free will. So if everything that you're going to do is predetermined and your safety is predetermined, then there's no free will or point of taking any precautions. Why would I put my seatbelt on or lock my door if it's already predetermined if a robber's coming or not, or if I'm getting in an accident? So we don't want to allow our spirituality to take us into a realm of magical thinking. And so we actually have to find a balance. It's good to be a spiritual minded person, but it's good to find a balance so that our beliefs are not detrimental. And that's what I want you to look at is, are my beliefs actually detrimental to me? So sometimes when we believe in certain things, like the idea that every marriage is created specifically by God, or every baby that's made is born or blessed by God to be able to exist. These little thoughts can cause us so much heartache when something doesn't go according to how we see the universe. For instance, just imagine if you're in the thinking that every child that's born is because God made that child specifically be born, and in the idea that he specifically put his hands in it, then we'll be confused as to why we were born to abusive parents, or why some children are born in captivity or in very terrible circumstances, right? So now when we assign everything to God, everything that happens, that was his plan and his will, now we're actually assigning everything evil to him as well. So we have to keep a correct balance there, right? Because that's where we have to watch out where spirituality doesn't become magical thinking. If we say that he's controlling everything, then when something bad happens to us, we're like, well, why did he do that? And that's going to hurt your relationship with your divine creator, right? Right. So it's better to have a grounded point of view. It's very clear that we live in a world that is fallen, alienated from God. Therefore, what? He may still help with some things, but he is not involved in every issue that's happening. Otherwise, we would be putting the blame on him for each thing that happens. So we have to be able to understand and recognize where free will really comes in, where imperfection comes in, and where the existence of evil is actually creating the problem in our lives and in the situation. So hopefully that helps to shed some light on this concept of magical thinking and how it can occur for a trauma survivor. Now, how can we make sure that we're staying grounded and we're not giving in to magical thinking in our own lives as a way of coping with trauma? In order to heal, healing comes down to the beliefs. So it's not my intention here to come and talk to you about religion, but your belief systems, many of them are religious-based belief systems. Some of those beliefs can be detrimental. If we make our child, our husband, our cult leader, our God, our pastor, our God, even though that's your religious belief, it is a detrimental belief. It is a detrimental belief to put any human up as your God, or any intangible object, such as money, your job, your car. These things cannot be our God. They cannot hold our worship. It's important to recognize that. Humans have limitations. Our child cannot be our God. So be careful in your wording. The way that you think matters. The specific wording that you use when you say something like, my baby is my everything. Just, you know you love your child. Of course. But just be careful. Someone said the other week, my mom is all I have. We're really blessed. We've been given a lot. And if we fail to acknowledge that we've been given a life, our soul, that we've been given a beautiful planet, that we've been given intelligence and wisdom and knowledge. And if you're someone who believes in a creator, to say that your mother is everything, is your everything, then you actually see how you kind of failed to acknowledge your creator too, failed to acknowledge yourself. So we got to keep things kind of like organized, right? Of course, our child means a lot to us. And maybe we love our mom, right? And maybe we don't have a lot of relatives, and that's what we mean to say. Well, then say what you mean. Say what you really mean. Make sure that you're not using fluffy language that causes you to trip over into putting up false idols. There's a reason for that, because the subconscious mind is an AI. So it's taking what you're saying as law. The way that you talk to it is taking it as law. It doesn't have its own ability to reason out, oh, he doesn't really mean that. No, when you say, hey, this job is my everything, the subconscious mind says, okay, Captain. So then when you lose your job, your subconscious mind punishes you. You go, why is this hurting so much? It's because you told your subconscious that that job was your everything. So what we want to do is keep everything in the proper place. And then the subconscious mind is able to handle the loss and the difficulties that we're inevitably going to experience. We have to keep everything in the proper place. Does that make sense? Some people start to worship their own abusers. Stockholm syndrome. Start to believe they're all powerful. If I try to leave, they'll know. If I try to leave, they'll find me. They're always going to know where I am. They're always going to find me. They're going to do something to sabotage my life. Oh, right? We got that worshipful. They're so powerful. No, they're humans and they're limited. They're humans and even when they're very, very, very well connected, there are still limitations. They still can't read your thoughts. And so you can still plan your escape. And it's okay to get away from people, even very powerful people. Look at what's happening with that prominent music producer who was beating and trafficking his girlfriend and girlfriends. Now he's right there on tape, kicking her, dragging her. And the whole world can see who he really is. It turns out he wasn't all powerful, because now we're watching him go down, 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 very slowly, nice and slow. And this is very validating to abuse survivors to have that where people can see, hey, when we tell you that my husband's beating on me and he's not letting me go, I'm telling you, I really mean it. But when we give that worshipful status to these people, whether they're celebrities, whoever they are, and sometimes they're our own abuser, we're dipping into magical thinking, and it's detrimental to us. So do this as an exercise to analyze your beliefs. Ask yourself, is this backed by evidence? Could I present evidence, even scientific evidence, to really support this belief? Or is this just something I heard somewhere or something I learned? Or is this something I like because it makes me feel good? That would be evidence that it's magical thinking. We just do, I like this because it makes me feel good. Okay, that could be magical thinking. I believe this because I've always believed it. Okay, that's great, but it could be magical thinking. Well, it was good enough for my grandfather, and it was good enough for his father, so it's good enough for me. A lot of people choose their religion like that. But you could be believing in just magical religion. Not every religion is teaching things that are helpful to you. And not every teaching in your religion is helpful. You have to make sure you personally analyze, research, contemplate, and meditate on everything you learn, everything, so that you are only accepting the beliefs that are most beneficial, accurate, and true. Because if you accept non-beneficial, detrimental beliefs that are not accurate, that are not true, it will cause you mental illness. We also have to get away from the tendency of wanting to see the universe in a way that's comfortable and instead learning to accept the universe for what it really is. This is changing our bias or our way of thinking. So sometimes it's comfortable for us to believe everything's our fault. Narcissists use this in a grandiosity way. Um, oh, that singer up there who sung that song, they got that idea from me. They stole that from me. That singer doesn't even know you, sir. You you live in Canada and that person lives in Nashville. You know, this is magical thinking that narcissists like to use. But we do this for ourselves as well when we take something negative and ascribe it to ourselves. Oh my God, there was a war that broke out, a tornado, a hurricane. I wonder if that's because I've been partying too much or because I didn't follow through on my promises, right? So we're taking disconnected things and trying to make them connected. We got to stop that. Let's analyze. Is there clear evidence for this belief? Is it illogical? Am I just believing it because it feels good to me to believe this because I've always thought like that? A resource that's available to you for free is on my website, mindfreed.org, mindfreed.org. You go to the resources page, and then you scroll down to the quality control checklists. The quality control checklist gives you multiple things that you can check about your thoughts and beliefs to figure out if they're really a high quality belief, something that's going to help you to move forward, or if they're a low quality belief, something that will cause you mental illness. And so that's what we really need to analyze. Are my beliefs high quality or are they something that's low quality that would actually hurt me? Again, healing comes down to changing the beliefs and changing the way of thinking and the behavior so that it will be beneficial to us. When all of your beliefs, your way of thinking, and your behaviors are beneficial, you won't need me anymore. You should still tune in on Mondays because I got some really great stuff, but you won't need me. You won't need my healing program or anyone's. You won't need therapy. You won't need anything because all of your beliefs, they're locked in to reality. And that's what I want for you. Are you ready for that? I'll tell you, it's freedom. It's bliss. It's happier than having a fantasy to escape to. Takes work to get there, but I'm committed to working with you as well as the other trauma specialists on my site. So take a look, mindfreed.org, and lock in with us. Be at the meetings, do your meditation each day, and make sure you're watching one of my videos on a daily basis until you heal.